The train platform was crowded, loud and impatient, until a tiny hand tugged his sleeve. He almost brushed it away. Then he heard her voice. Soft, shaking. What she asked him in that moment stopped his breath, silenced the noise around him, and changed the course of both their lives forever. Daniel had learned to keep his eyes forward. Years in the city had trained him well. Don't stare. Don't stop. Don't get involved. Everyone was in a hurry, and so was he. The platform smelled of metal and rain. Announcements echoing overhead. People brushing past like waves that never noticed the shore. He checked his watch, irritation tightening his jaw. Late again. That's when he felt it. A small hand. Barely there. Light, hesitant, but determined. He looked down, ready to pull away, until he saw her. She couldn't have been more than 6. Thin jacket. Shoes too big. Hair uneven, as if no one had time to fix it properly. Her eyes were what stopped him. Not wide with childish curiosity, but heavy. Tired. Older than they should have been. I'm sorry, she whispered, her fingers still clinging to his sleeve like it was the only solid thing in the world. Daniel's first instinct was panic. Where were her parents? Why him? He glanced around, expecting someone to rush forward, annoyed that he'd been interrupted. No one did. People passed as if the child was invisible. What's wrong? He asked, softer than he intended. She swallowed. Her grip tightened. I need help, she said. 2 simple words. But something in her voice told him this wasn't a small problem. And for the first time in years, Daniel didn't look at his watch. Daniel crouched slightly, so he wouldn't tower over her. Where's your mom or dad? He asked, keeping his voice calm, even though his heart had begun to race. The girl shook her head slowly. I don't know, she said. Those words landed heavier than he expected. Children usually cried, pointed, shouted. She did none of that. She just stood there, quiet, like someone who had learned that making noise didn't always bring help. My name is Lily, she added, as if that explained everything. Daniel introduced himself, unsure why that suddenly felt important. Around them, the platform continued its restless rhythm. Trains arriving, doors opening, people rushing toward destinations that mattered only to them. He felt strangely removed from it all, like the world had narrowed to the space between him and this child. Why did you stop me? He asked gently. Lily hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the ground, then back up to his face, searching, measuring, deciding whether he was safe. You look kind, she said finally. The words hit him unexpectedly. Kind. No one had used that word for him in a long time. He wasn't sure he deserved it. Before he could respond, her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm scared, she said, and I don't know what to do anymore. Daniel straightened slowly, scanning the crowd again. Still no one. A familiar instinct told him to find security. Hand her over, step away. That would be the responsible thing. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her fingers still trembled on his sleeve. Or maybe it was the quiet realization that, right now, he was the only one who hadn't walked past her. Daniel guided Lily to a bench near the edge of the platform, far enough from the crowd to breathe, but close enough to feel safe. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, legs dangling, eyes fixed on the ground. Can you tell me what happened? He asked. She took a deep breath, the kind that came from someone used to bracing themselves. Mom told me to wait, she said. She said she'd be back fast. When was that? Lily shrugged. I don't know. It was still light. Daniel's chest tightened. It was dark now. She was tired. Lily continued quietly. She's always tired. Something about that sentence carried weight, like a truth Lily didn't fully understand but had learned to accept. Daniel thought of his own mother, gone years ago, and the way exhaustion had shaped her life too. Did she say where she was going? He asked. Lily shook her head again. She just said to be brave. Daniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. He felt anger rise, not at Lily's mother exactly, but at the world that made people leave children behind with promises they couldn't keep. "Have you eaten today?" he asked. She nodded. "This morning." That wasn't good enough. Not even close. He offered her his coat when he noticed her shivering. She hesitated, then accepted it carefully, like a fragile gift. "Thank you," she whispered. 2 words again. Small, powerful. And suddenly Daniel realized something unsettling. Helping her no longer felt like an obligation. It felt personal. Daniel called station security, keeping Lily close, but not gripping her, letting her know she still had control. While they waited, he asked gentle questions. Her full name, where she lived, what her mother was like. "She's nice," Lily said quickly, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing. "She just gets sad sometimes." Daniel nodded, though his chest ached. Sad was a word children used when they didn't have language for heavier things. Security arrived, polite but distant. They spoke in practiced tones, asking routine questions. Lily's shoulders tensed. She leaned closer to Daniel without realizing it. "She can stay with me," Daniel said suddenly, surprising himself as much as everyone else. "Until you find her family." The guard raised an eyebrow. "Sir, I won't leave," Daniel added firmly. "I promise." Lily looked up at him then, really looked at him, as if trying to understand why a stranger would say that. "Will you go away too?" she asked quietly. The question pierced him. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. Daniel swallowed. "No," he said. "I'm right here." For the first time since she'd touched his sleeve, Lily smiled, small, uncertain, but real. In that moment, Daniel felt something crack open inside him, a place he had sealed off long ago. He didn't know where this path would lead. He only knew one thing now. Walking away was no longer an option. As they waited in a quiet office, Lily finally asked the question that had been sitting heavy in her chest. She spoke slowly, carefully, as if afraid the words might break. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel nodded. She twisted the edge of his coat in her fingers. "If my mom doesn't come back, is it my fault?" The room seemed to shrink. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Of all the questions she could have asked, this one stole his breath. He knelt in front of her, making sure she saw his face clearly. "No," he said firmly. "Never. Not even a little." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "I try to be good," she whispered. "I stayed where she told me." Daniel placed a hand over hers, steady and warm. "You did everything right," he said. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Big ones. And kids carry the weight even when they shouldn't." A tear slipped down her cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He let it exist. Outside the office, life continued. Trains moving, clocks ticking, people rushing forward. But inside, something profound was happening. Lily leaned into him, finally allowing herself to rest. And Daniel understood then. That small hand, pulling his sleeve, hadn't just asked for help. It had asked for reassurance, for safety, for someone to stay. And without realizing it, Daniel had already answered. The hours that followed felt suspended, as if time itself had slowed out of respect for Lily's quiet fear. Daniel sat beside her while officials made calls, typed reports, and exchanged low voices outside the room. Lily listened without speaking, her legs curled up on the chair, eyes following every movement, like she was afraid the ground beneath her might disappear if she looked away. Daniel noticed how often she flinched at sudden sounds. The slam of a door, a raised voice in the hallway. These weren't the reactions of a carefree child. They belonged to someone who had learned unpredictability early. "Do you like stories?" Daniel asked softly, breaking the silence. She nodded. "Mom used to tell me some, when she wasn't tired." So he told her one. A simple story from his childhood, about a boy who used to believe adults always knew what they were doing. Lily listened intently, her breathing slowly evening out. For the first time, Daniel felt something unfamiliar: purpose. Not the kind tied to deadlines or achievements, but the kind that came from being needed in a quiet, human way. When an officer returned with news that her mother still hadn't been found, Lily didn't cry. She simply asked, "Can I stay with you for now?" Daniel hesitated only a second. "Yes," he said, and the word felt heavier and more meaningful than any promise he'd ever made. They left the station together, Lily's hand tucked into Daniel's like it had always belonged there. The city outside was colder, harsher, full of sharp edges that didn't care about small hearts. Daniel held the door open for her, guiding her gently through crowds that seemed louder now, more intrusive. At his apartment, Lily stood in the doorway, uncertain. She scanned the space carefully, as if memorizing exits. "You're safe here," Daniel said quietly. She nodded but didn't relax right away. Trust, he realized, wasn't automatic for her. It had to be earned, slowly. He made her a simple meal. She ate politely, thanking him after every bite. That, too, hurt more than it should have. No child should sound so practiced in gratitude. Later, as she sat on the couch wrapped in his spare blanket, Lily finally asked, "Do you live alone?" "Yes," Daniel answered. She thought about that. "Is it lonely?" The question caught him off guard. He had never labeled it that way. "Sometimes," he admitted. She nodded like she understood. "Mom says lonely makes people tired on the inside." That night, when Lily fell asleep on the couch instead of the guest bed, Daniel didn't move her. He watched her chest rise and fall, feeling a quiet fear settle in. This wasn't temporary anymore. It was becoming real. Days passed without news. Social services searched. Police followed leads that led nowhere. Lily's mother remained missing, like a question with no answer. Daniel adjusted his life around Lily without noticing when it happened. He took time off work, learned which cereal she liked, discovered she hated loud cartoons, but loved drawing silently for hours. One afternoon, while coloring at the table, Lily suddenly asked, "Do you think she forgot me?" Daniel felt his heart fracture slightly. He chose his words with care. "No," he said, "I think she's lost. And sometimes people don't know how to find their way back." Lily pressed her crayon too hard, snapping it in half. She stared at the broken pieces. "I tried to help her," she whispered. "How?" "I told her I was okay, even when I wasn't." Daniel reached across the table, gently placing his hand over hers. "That wasn't your job," he said. "That was never your job." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. She had learned that crying didn't always change outcomes. That night, Daniel lay awake long after Lily fell asleep, staring at the ceiling. He thought about all the times he had walked past people who needed help because it was easier not to look. He wondered how many small hands had reached out, and how many times the world had failed to notice. The call came early in the morning. Lily's mother had been found, alive but fragile, hospitalized, overwhelmed. Daniel felt relief and dread collide in his chest. He didn't know what reunion would look like. He only knew Lily deserved honesty. At the hospital, Lily stood frozen outside the room. "What if she doesn't want me anymore?" she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her. "She does," he said gently. "And even if she's broken right now, that doesn't mean she stopped loving you." Inside, the reunion was quiet. No dramatic tears. Just a tired woman reaching out with shaking hands, and a little girl stepping forward cautiously, like someone approaching something fragile. "I'm sorry," her mother whispered again and again. Lily listened. Then she said something that made Daniel's chest tighten. "I waited," she said. "Like you said." Her mother sobbed then, burying her face into Lily's hair. Daniel stepped back, giving them space, feeling something bittersweet settle inside him. This was right, and yet it hurt. As they left the hospital, Lily squeezed his hand. "Thank you for not leaving," she said. Daniel smiled softly. "I meant it." And he did, even if this goodbye wasn't the ending he'd expected. Weeks later, life returned to a rhythm, but not the old one. Lily went back to her mother, now receiving help, now trying again. Daniel returned to work. The city remained loud, rushed, and different. But something in Daniel had changed permanently. Sometimes, on his commute, he thought he felt a small tug on his sleeve. Sometimes he slowed down instead of rushing past. Sometimes he looked. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Inside was a drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands. On the back, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for staying." Daniel held the paper for a long time. He understood now that kindness wasn't about fixing lives. It was about pausing long enough to acknowledge them. That small hand hadn't just pulled his sleeve. It had pulled him back into humanity. And from that day on, Daniel promised himself something simple but powerful. When someone reached out, he would never look away again. Daniel didn't expect Lily to stay with him in his thoughts, but she did. In quiet moments, waiting for coffee, sitting in traffic, lying awake at night, her voice returned to him. The way she had asked questions that were too heavy for her age. The way she had thanked him for things no child should need to thank an adult for. He started noticing children more. A boy crying on a bus. A girl clinging to her mother's coat in a grocery store. He wondered what stories lived behind their silence. One evening, he found himself standing outside a community center, staring at a sign about volunteer mentoring. He almost walked away, almost told himself he was too busy. But then he remembered Lily's question, "Is it lonely?" Inside, the center smelled of crayons and worn furniture. Children laughed somewhere down the hall. Daniel signed his name without overthinking it. Weeks later, he sat across from a quiet boy named Marcus, who reminded him painfully of Lily. Same guarded eyes, same careful distance. "Do you always leave?" Marcus asked suddenly. Daniel paused, then answered honestly. "No," he said, "not if I matter." The boy nodded, absorbing that. Daniel realized then that Lily hadn't just needed help. She had changed the direction of his life, turning his regret into responsibility and his loneliness into purpose. Meanwhile, Lily struggled in ways few noticed. Her mother was trying, therapy appointments, medication, better days, but healing wasn't instant. Some nights, Lily still lay awake, listening for footsteps that might not come. She kept Daniel's coat folded neatly in her closet, a reminder, proof. One afternoon, she asked her mother, "Why did that man help me?" Her mother swallowed hard. "Because he chose kindness," she said, "even when it was inconvenient." Lily thought about that often. At school, when another child cried alone, she sat beside them. When a classmate dropped their lunch, she shared hers. She didn't know it, but she was learning the language of compassion early. During a follow-up visit with social services, Lily spoke softly but clearly. "I wasn't invisible," she said. "Someone saw me." That mattered more than anyone realized. Her mother watched her daughter carefully now, aware of the weight Lily carried, aware of the damage silence could cause. Regret lingered, but so did gratitude. Sometimes love didn't look like perfection. Sometimes it looked like trying again, with help. And Lily learned something powerful. That broken beginnings didn't mean broken endings, as long as someone was willing to stay. Daniel and Lily met again months later by chance. A bookstore. A quiet aisle. She spotted him first. "You stayed," she said simply, like a fact she had been holding on to. He smiled, kneeling slightly. "So did you." They talked briefly. About school. About drawings. About how her mom was less tired now. Daniel listened more than he spoke. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged him tightly. Not desperate, not afraid, just grateful. That hug told him everything. After she walked away, Daniel stood still for a long time. He realized that moments didn't need to last forever to matter. Some only needed to happen once, at the exact right time. He walked out of the bookstore lighter. Years passed. Daniel continued mentoring, continued choosing presence, continued slowing down when the world rushed him forward. He never forgot the platform, the noise, the small hand, because kindness, he learned, wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It whispered. It waited. And sometimes it pulled a sleeve. Lily grew older with a quiet strength. She remembered the fear, but it no longer defined her. When asked about heroes, she didn't mention superheroes or famous names. She said, someone who stops. Her mother watched her become kinder, braver, softer with others. Regret still visited, but it no longer ruled their home. Healing was imperfect, but real. Daniel received a graduation invitation years later. Lily had insisted. In the crowd, he watched her step onto the stage, confident, smiling. When she spotted him, she waved. Just once. That was enough. He understood then that compassion creates echoes, that a single act could ripple through time, shaping choices, shaping lives. Not every story needed rescuing, but every story needed noticing. Daniel clapped until his hands hurt, tears blurring his vision. And Lily, once invisible, stood tall in the light. The world never slowed down. Trains still arrived late. People still rushed. Pain still existed. But somewhere within the chaos, something had shifted. Daniel learned that life didn't ask for perfection, only presence. Lily learned that help could come from unexpected places. Her mother learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. And all of them learned that second chances often begin with one simple choice: to stop, to listen, to stay. The smallest gestures could carry the heaviest meaning. A hand, a sleeve, a question brave enough to be asked. Not all stories end with miracles. Some end with understanding, and sometimes that is enough. Years later, Daniel found himself back at the same train platform. The pain had changed. The signs were newer, but the noise, the impatience, the rush felt exactly the same. People still walked fast, eyes glued to phones, shoulders tense with destinations that felt urgent. He stood still for a moment, letting the memory surface. The small hand, the tug, the question that had undone him. Daniel realized how close he had come to missing it all. One step faster, one glance away, and Lily's story might have unfolded very differently. That thought humbled him more than anything else ever had. A child cried somewhere behind him. Instinctively, Daniel turned. The mother was already there, kneeling, comforting. Daniel exhaled, relieved. Kindness didn't always need him anymore. That was the point. As the train arrived, Daniel stepped forward, not rushed, not distracted. He carried with him a quiet awareness now. A sensitivity to pauses, to hesitation, to the invisible weight people carried. He understood something deeply at last. Life wasn't defined by the moments we planned for, but by the moments that interrupted us and asked who we really were. The train doors closed behind him, but the lesson stayed. Lily, now older, volunteered at a youth center on weekends. She listened more than she spoke. She recognized fear quickly, because she had lived inside it once. When a younger girl asked her, "What if no one helps me?" Lily didn't hesitate. "Someone will," she said, "but sometimes you have to let them see you." She didn't say why she believed that. She didn't need to. Her mother watched her from a distance, heart heavy with both pride and regret. The past could not be erased, but it had been transformed. Therapy, patience, and honesty had rebuilt what silence once damaged. Some nights, they talked openly about that day, not with blame, but with understanding. "I was scared," her mother admitted once. "So was I," Lily replied gently. That honesty healed them more than denial ever could. Lily learned that adults could be flawed and still worthy of love. Her mother learned that children were stronger than they seemed, but should never have to be. Their bond wasn't perfect. It was real. And real, Lily had learned, was enough. Daniel received a letter years later. The handwriting was familiar. Inside was a simple note. "I still stop," it read. He smiled, understanding immediately. The letter reminded him that kindness wasn't a one-time act. It was a habit, a choice repeated quietly over time. Daniel had helped many people since Lily, but he never compared them. Every story mattered on its own. Still, Lily remained the beginning, the reminder, the turning point. He framed the letter, not as a trophy, but as a promise. On difficult days, when the world felt heavy and indifferent, he looked at it and remembered. That being present was enough. That staying mattered. He no longer wondered if he had done the right thing. He knew, not because everything turned out perfectly, but because he had answered when someone reached out. And that, he realized, was the measure of a life well lived. Time passed the way it always does, quietly, relentlessly. Lily became someone who noticed, someone who paused, someone who believed that small acts could change directions. She carried no illusion that kindness fixed everything, but she knew it could steady someone long enough to breathe again. Daniel aged too, softer around the edges, slower in his steps, but richer in understanding. He never stopped believing that humanity survived in these unnoticed spaces, between rush and silence, fear and courage. The world continued its chaos, but beneath it, something gentler endured. A truth simple enough to forget, and powerful enough to save someone. That sometimes all a person needs is to not be ignored. Somewhere another platform waited, another street, another ordinary place where an extraordinary moment would unfold quietly. A child would hesitate, an adult would choose, and the story would begin again. Not with miracles, not with grand gestures, but with attention, with a pause, with the courage to stay. Some stories don't shout, they whisper, asking us to slow down, to notice, to care. If this story touched your heart, like the video, subscribe, and join our Heart Angels family, because compassion still exists when we choose to see it.